Hello there. I'm just looking for the right tool to put this little frame back together. With the right tool, this is going to go a lot easier. You know, that reminds me. Some people have been saying that tests no longer have a place in the modern teacher's toolkit. Well, research shows us differently, that tests are worth keeping a lot around in our toolkit for just a little while longer. By test, I mean any assessment mechanism, oral or written, that asks students to recall information in an oral or written way about a certain subject in a certain time period. So when we think about what the research has given us in terms of benefits, what are we talking about? Well, research has demonstrated that doing tests helps students learn. Our brains are constantly adjusting to the circumstances in front of us. And so when we give our students a test, that's a circumstance that tells their brains that what they learned last week is something that they need to know today. And that gives the signal that they might also need to remember it next week. And so new connections are formed that make it easier for that information to be recalled and used for any purpose at all in the future. So giving tests actually changes and improves our ability to recall information. And this is called the testing effect. But wait, why do our students need to know anything? Can't they just Google it? Shouldn't we be focusing on higher level skills? Well, higher level thinking is about making connections between the things we know. And students who don't have a solid knowledge base that they can easily retrieve can't make those connections easily. So higher level thinking depends on the ability to retrieve information, which is strengthened through the testing effect. The testing effect has been demonstrated on many research studies. In one study, grade 3 students were divided into two groups. One group was given a short passage to read and then asked to reread it 2 more times. The other group was given the same short passage to read and then given a short fill-in-the-blank test. Neither group was given any feedback on how they did, but a week later, both groups were given a multiple choice exam. The reread group scored on average 53%. The quiz group scored on average 87%. Those are the type of learning gains that we need to pay attention to as students. A recent meta-analysis showed that low-stakes testing was superior to all other learning strategies when it came to improving summative assessment results, regardless of the assessment mechanism. That's something we all need to pay attention to. So well-designed tests help our students learn. Are there other reasons to use tests? Well, some say a problem with tests is that they fail to provide an authentic environment to use the knowledge learned. The fact is, the world is full of test-like circumstances. Job interviews, driving tests, entrance exams, certification training, on-the-job training. Giving students experience with tests is preparing them to live in the world as it exists today. Studies show a positive relationship between test scores and future salaries, even for our students that do not go on to post-secondary education. Now, some have suggested that tests cause students anxiety, and for this reason, should never be used. Now, some of these claims are not based on sound research evidence, and it's important to take that into account when we're dealing with opinion rather than research about what happens in the real world with real students. Experiments have demonstrated that test anxiety does not predict a performance. In other words, students who are anxious about tests but have high levels of knowledge still score at the levels expected for their knowledge. So that gives us an indication that tests are a reliable mechanism, even for students who experience anxiety. Furthermore, avoidance is not an evidence-based treatment for anxiety. And so if a teacher is concerned about our students who have test-related anxiety, avoiding tests may in fact be one of the worst things that we can do for supporting that student for a successful future in the world as it is. Teachers concerned about test anxiety need to consider 2 points. First, a well-designed test gives reliable results. And second, teachers need to ensure that students are equipped with the knowledge and skills to succeed on those tests before those tests are administered. So do tests serve a purpose in 2025? Will tests help students retain what they have learned so they can use that knowledge in the future? Tests help students prepare for the world as it actually exists beyond the schoolroom doors. Well-designed tests provide information about student achievement that can be used for summative and formative purposes. Student anxiety around testing is not a reason to avoid tests, but may in fact be a reason to ensure that tests remain as part of the assessment repertoire. It's the 21st century. The modern carpenter has all sorts of power tools, but keeps her hammer handy for the right jobs. So too should the modern teacher. Be aware of all of the assessment mechanisms, use virtual reality, videos, other computer-based mechanisms. But just like the carpenter continues to use her handy hammer, tests continue to have a place in the 21st century toolkit.